The story begins with the guy opening his eyes for a moment. A terrible apocalyptic reality appeared before him. The main character saw a destroyed and extinct city. The sky was filled with flying monsters. Terrible reality scared the main character and he closed his eyes to come to his senses. Having calmed down, the guy looked around. He could not understand where he was and what was going on around him. The sun no longer shone in the sky, but was in eclipse. The city is overrun by huge, dangerous and surreal monsters. The main character looked around. He could not yet understand what kind of place this was around him. At this time, crippled and exhausted people began to crawl up to the guy. They called him the Lady Witch. The guy saw barely living people around him. They all asked him for help and called him a witch. The main character began to break free. He shouted in fear to people that he was not a witch, but just an ordinary person. Trying to escape from the surrounding people, the main character ran up and rested his back against some building. After thinking a little, the main character excitedly realized that he didn't remember anything. The guy looked into his reflection in the window and noticed that he looked like a young girl with blonde hair in a long medieval dress. The main character was surprised when he looked at his reflection. He couldn't believe that it was him who looked like that. The girl excitedly put her hand to her head. She couldn't believe that all this was real. The girl asked herself in fear and surprise, "Is all this really a dream?" At this time, the bloody hands of monsters reached out to the girl. The main character still could not understand that he now looks like a girl. The girl turned around and looked at the people around her with a frightened look. The survivors asked the witch to help them. The girl asked to be released. People continued to grab her from all sides and ask for help. The young witch could no longer resist. She was grabbed by hands from all sides. Unexpectedly, the guy very abruptly woke up from his nightmare. The guy was very shocked by such a realistic dream. He screamed in fear after waking up. The guy sat down on his bed. He couldn't catch his breath after the nightmare he had seen. The main character grabbed the blanket with fear. He could not believe that this dream had frightened him again. A little distracted, the guy looked at the clock that stood near his bed. The main character looked at his watch. He noticed that today was already the 22nd of February. After thinking a little, the guy remembered that today he had to have a meeting with the doctor. The main character's name is Liu Yubei. He got out of bed and began to get ready. The guy was brushing his teeth in the bathroom. From the very beginning, Liu Yubei was an ordinary teenager. A couple of years ago, due to an accident, he had vision problems and had to have surgery. Liu Yu was getting dressed, preparing to go to the doctor. For him, the eye surgery was successful, but from that time on he began to see strange things. Liu Yu was putting on his shoes, preparing to go to the doctor. He has already visited all the city hospitals to understand exactly what happened to him. Liu Yu was preparing to go to a new doctor. He was sure that this time he would be helped. The main character arrived at exactly the appointed time to see his doctor. The doctor calmly asked the guy to first describe his problem to him. Liu Yu calmly told the doctor that he had been having problems with his eyes lately and had started seeing strange things. The doctor said that the guy's card said that he had been in an accident and had eye damage. Liu Yu also had her corneas transplanted, operation well successful. The doctor asked the guy what exactly he sees. The main character decided to tell the doctor everything. He told the doctor not to be scared. The doctor was holding a kettle of tea. He calmly told the patient that he had seen a lot in his life and would not be surprised. Liu Yu was silent. He could not muster up the courage to tell the doctor about his visions. The guy said that he often sees oddities, but he remembered several cases for a long time. Liu Yu told how one evening he saw a girl walking with her dog. The doctor asked what was unusual about this. The main character hesitated. It was difficult for him to continue telling his story. Liu Yu said that the dog walking next to the girl was huge, the size of a truck. The doctor was surprised. The story he heard shocked and surprised him greatly. He had never heard of anything like this before. The guy said that it only got worse. The girl jumped on her dog and flew up into the night sky. Liu Yu looked at the sky. He said that he couldn't be fit to be a big brother for such a small thing. The main character decided to tell the doctor what he saw the day before yesterday. The doctor was very interested. The main character decided to change clothes, but something distracted him very much. Liu Yu told the doctor that when he was at school, he saw a girl in the men's locker room. After the schoolgirl saw the main character, she immediately ran away in fear. The doctor was amused. He explained that the schoolgirl simply confused the changing rooms and ran away because she was ashamed. The main character got angry. He shouted to the doctor that he had not yet told him the whole story. When the schoolgirl ran away, she left her head on the floor. The head frightenedly screamed at the guy not to come near her. The doctor was amazed and worried about the stories he heard from the main character. The stories began to excite him more and more. His glasses even cracked. Liu said that he immediately called the police, but the police found only a pink hairpin instead of a head on the floor. The doctor asked excitedly, "What happened next?" Unexpectedly, the doctor became agitated and told the guy sternly that they needed to talk. The doctor told the patient that he understood everything. Liu has serious problems because he met a ghost. The main character slammed his hand on the table. He was very excited. Liu told the doctor that he came to the hospital because he believed in modern medicine. The doctor told the guy to sit down calmly. He added that we need to think about psychological problems. The main character told the doctor that he had previously told him about the third case. The doctor replied that he was listening carefully to the patient. Liu became very worried. He saw that something scared him very much. The guy turned to the doctor. The main character noticed how bloody handprints appeared on the wall of the medical office. The doctor asked the frightened one to ask the main character to tell everything as it is. The doctor told the guy that he was a professional. Liu saw a huge monster appear. The doctor said calmly that he was not afraid of anything. Behind him stood a huge and frightening monster. Having collected his thoughts, the main character calmly told the doctor to look at what was behind him. The main character ran away from the doctor's office and hid on the hospital grounds. Doctors were running around and asking the main character to return. They promised to help him. Liu hid under a bush. The main character thought reassuringly to himself that he was very lucky that he did not end up in a mental hospital. The main character waited until evening came. He needed to get home. The guy waited for the bus he needed and went up inside the cabin. Liu felt relaxed and calm. He took out his smartphone to distract himself. On the smartphone, the anime girl asked the main character cheerfully, what adventure awaits them today. Liu held his smartphone close to him and told the anime girl that only she could bring him a ray of light. The girl squeaked from her smartphone so that the guy wouldn't touch her. The guy looked to the side and became very worried. Something scared him once again. Liu looked out of the bus window onto the street. The whole area was swarming with huge and terrible monsters. The main character became very scared. Yet another encounter with monsters horrified him. Liu decided to take a break. He closed his eyes and turned his head to the side to take the terrible vision away from him. Having calmed down a little, the guy looked out the bus window again. The streets looked ordinary without monsters. The main character calmed down and breathed out a sigh of relief. The next nightmares left him. Liu thought contentedly to himself that he was already tired of terrible visions. A red-haired girl was sitting in the back row of the bus. The girl asked the fish sitting next to her if the main character was a witch. The fish answered the girl that she had done a good job. A girl from the back row called the main character. Liu became a little wary. The fish told the girl that the guy is a witch who will destroy the whole world and he needs to be killed. The girl threateningly asked the main character if his name was Liu Bei. The main character thought that the girl was dressed strangely and was also talking to her toy. The main character turned to the girl and calmly answered her that his name was Song Ji Woo. The driver announced through the loudspeaker that the bus had arrived at the Flower City station. Passengers exit through the rear door. The main character very quickly jumped out of the bus and said goodbye to the annoying girl. The girl rushed to the window inside the bus and shouted to the main character to wait. Liu walked contentedly down the street. The girl asked her monster, "How can a guy become a witch?" The monster told the girl that he could not be mistaken. Liu is the future witch who will destroy the world. The girl shouted decisively that we needed to act. She must save the world and destroy Song Ji Woo. The monster calmly told the girl that the guy had deceived her. His real name is Liu Bei. The girl fell silent. She couldn't believe that the guy had just deceived her like that. The monster looked at her questioningly. There was a long pause. The girl could not agree that she had simply missed the main character. As a result, the girl shouted menacingly, "How dare the guy Liu dare to deceive her?" The excited protagonist walked down the street in the evening. He said there was no point in hospitals. The guy decided to himself that he might just forget about his problems and his visions. Liu thought to himself that his problems might go away with time. At that time a huge rabbit appeared in front of him. The guy ran into the mysterious rabbit. He asked for forgiveness in a frightened voice. The main character sat on the earth and looked in surprise at the standing rabbit, who was holding some papers in his hands. The rabbit was very tall with burning eyes, he looked especially frightening against the night sky. At this time the rabbit handed some paper to the main character. The guy looked closely. Lu Yu saw that the rabbit showed him a flyer with some toys. The main character answered the rabbit that he simply did not have money. The rabbit walked on silently. Moving away a little, the guy told the rabbit that he had a very ugly suit. A quiet and exciting night was over the city. The main character walked to his home. The guy walked calmly and quietly down the street. He felt something start to worry him a little. Something demonic spread down the street and reached the rabbit. The leaflet in his hands was greatly transformed. The rabbit's calm appearance changed into a threatening and dangerous grimace. The rabbit took on a surreal appearance. It was as if someone had ordered him to find someone and kill him. The main character was at home in his apartment late at night. The street was already empty. Lu Yu looked at the mysterious figurine of an Indian deity standing on his shelf. At this time his phone was ringing. All the main character's attention was absorbed in contemplation of the figure. The phone continued to ring. The main character picked up the phone and decided to answer the incoming call. The interlocutor angrily asked Lu Yu why he didn't pick up the phone and explained how he liked the gift. Lu Yu was a little surprised and decided to hold the phone and then answer. The main character held the figurine given to him in his hands. He asked his interlocutor what it was. The interlocutor replied that it was a new hit. The guy on the other end of the line reminded the main character that he had seen unusual things lately. After this, the guy explained to the main character that the figurine of the deity is a talisman that will protect him from evil spirits. Lu Yu asked angrily, why does he need this Japanese deity? The guy stood with a cigarette and did not notice how ghosts began to appear behind him. The guy cheerfully told the main character that the talisman protects against nuclear explosions and will help against spirits. After that, the guy said to Lu Yu that it was time for him to go and that he should not forget to go to school. The main character asked his interlocutor, is he really working as a pimp in a nightclub again? The guy smiled and cheerfully told the main character that he was just helping men make money. At the end of the conversation, the guy told the main character that he would also get him a job if he didn't study well. At this time, a crowd of monsters began to approach the guy. The guy did not pay attention to the approaching monsters. He shouted dissatisfiedly that Lu Yu didn't even let him finish. A huge cluster of monsters was approaching the guy from behind. He smoked and didn't notice anything. The guy turned around and extended his hand towards the monster. He said it was time to work. Then, without being at all afraid and without even turning around, the guy grabbed the monsters with his hand. The guy was able to neutralize the monsters that threatened him without any problems. The monsters scattered into pieces. Then the guy felt as if someone else was watching him. He turned around. The guy displeasedly told the monsters behind him that it was in vain that they did not let him talk to his brother. The monster gradually approached the guy and prepared to attack him. The guy cheerfully told the monsters in front of him that they would pay for this with their lives. After that, the person activated a skill called Sacred Battle to fight against the monsters. The guy decided to use a spell called Dreams of 1,000 Blades against the monsters. A monster with a big track rushed at the guy. He stood and was completely calm. The main character at that time was sitting at home in his apartment in his bedroom. Lu Yu looked at the talisman standing on the nightstand. He decided to sell it on the internet. After that, the guy thought that he was very tired today and it was time to take a nap. The guy lay down on the bed and stretched out. He decided to remember the events of this evening. Lu Yu remembered that he approached the rabbit on the street and didn't even realize it. He was glad that nothing happened in the end. The main character, closing his eyes, remembered that the rabbit on the street looked very scary. The guy felt a magical transformation begin with him. It was as if he had been transported somewhere. Lu Yu realized that he was no longer in his room. He looked around and couldn't understand where he ended up. The main character could not understand which room he was transported to. Everything looked alien. There were clothes for the girl on the sofa. The guy was scared. He heard some suspicious noise near the door to the room. Someone's footsteps were heard. The main character got scared and realized that someone had come. There was the sound of a door opening. The main character froze in frightened anticipation. The door opened and a girl entered the room. She said in an exhausted voice that she was tired. The stranger began to take off her shoes. She recalled that she was wined and entertained all the time, but was paid well. The guy was hiding behind the sofa. The girl said in an almost sleepy voice that she could be patient. After that, the beautiful stranger fell onto the bed and immediately passed out. The main character stood up quietly and very silently. He looked to see if the girl had woken up. The guy was very surprised. He couldn't understand when he could end up in the women's bedroom. Lu Yu thought happily to himself that it was very good that the girl did not turn on the light. He walked quietly around the room. The guy reached for the doorknob. He thought to himself that it was time to run away. At this time, a suspicious noise was heard outside the door. The main character became worried. The guy felt some kind of magical presence, as if someone mystical was standing nearby. Lu Yu became even more frightened. He realized that he could not escape and therefore he was finished. The main character looked and noticed that the door was locked and hoped that the door would hold. Unexpectedly, due to a strong blow, the latch on the door shattered. A lilac color appeared from the street. The main character became worried and scared. He noticed that the door was completely open. Lu Yu noticed how someone's very tall figure stood behind the open door. The main character noticed how in front of him was a huge rabbit, which he had seen before. The guy was numb, from surprise and surprise. He realized that he saw in front of him a rabbit with leaflets. The main character looked at the mystical rabbit and could not understand what he had forgotten here. At this time the rabbit took a huge knife out of his pocket and began to walk around the room. The main character thought in fear why the rabbit needed a knife in this place and at this time. The guy gathered up his courage and decided to stop the rabbit. He covered himself with his hands and shouted at him not to come. A rabbit with a knife passed by the main character, as if through a ghost. The guy was very surprised. He didn't immediately understand why he couldn't stop the rabbit. The guy turned around and saw that the rabbit had passed by him and was moving on as if nothing had happened. The main character was very amazed. He couldn't understand how the rabbit could just walk past him. Lu Yu looked at the mystical rabbit and fearfully noticed that he had approached the bed. The rabbit stood silently with a knife near the bed and looked at the girl sleeping there. The main character has already forgotten that he wanted to escape. He looked at the rabbit with fear and did not understand what he was doing. The rabbit with a knife in his hand continued to approach the girl sleeping on the bed in order to kill her. Lu Yu realized that the girl was sleeping deeply. He shouted at her telepathically to get up. The main character thought fearfully to himself that he needed to do something in such a situation. The guy wanted to help the girl, but he was also afraid of the rabbit with the knife. Having become emboldened, the guy shouted to the girl to get up quickly, otherwise she would be cut. The stranger lay without any movement. The guy shouted again to the girl to get up quickly. The rabbit prepared to stab the girl. The guy kept screaming for the girl to wake up. The rabbit looked at his future victim with burning demonic eyes. After that, the rabbit swung his knife and prepared to hit the girl. The rabbit inflicted a fatal blow on the girl with a knife. The victim didn't even resist. The main character looked numbly at the murder scene. He realized that there was nothing more he could do. The rabbit did not stop. He continued to strike the already motionless body of the girl. The main character looked in fascination at the dead girl and her mystical killer. The rabbit continued to hack at its victim with the knife. Li Yu still tried to scream for help. The guy was shocked. He could not save the girl, although she was very close. Lu Yu realized in fright that the rabbit had killed the girl right before his eyes. The rabbit sat on top of the girl and looked calmly at her lifeless body. Suddenly the mystical beast felt something. He turned his head to the side. The rabbit still held the sword in his hand and decided to get out of the bed where the girl's corpse lay. The guy was very scared. He realized that the rabbit had noticed his presence in the room. The main character began to stare back. He touched a shoe standing on the floor, causing a loud noise. The exhausted guy ran into the wall. He felt that he could not run any further. Lu Yu was sitting on the floor near the wall. He was very frightened and could no longer run away anywhere. At this time, a rabbit with burning eyes approached the guy and shouted to him telepathically that he had found him. The main character looked at the demonic rabbit in fear. He heard words about death in his mind. Late at night on the 24th of February, a large number of police converged on the scene of the murder. A girl dressed as a maid greeted the lady with the sword and said that they were already waiting for her. The lady entered the room. She excitedly told those present that she was in charge of C-rank stories. The victim's body had already been removed from the bed. At the same time, a huge bloody trail was left on the bed. There were a lot of police around. The guy sitting next to him greeted the arriving lady. He was glad that she came. The guy cheerfully told the lady that he was already hungry. He invited her to eat too. The lady reminded displeasedly that today was not her duty. She asked the guy what he wanted. The guy said something intriguing to his interlocutor, that she would definitely be interested in this. The guy showed the lady a piece of white wool. He asked her what it was. The girl was very surprised and amazed when she saw a piece of white wool. The guy cheerfully confirmed to the girl that he was holding a rabbit fur in his hands. The lady said in surprise that Mr. Rabbit belonged to the family of the Twilight Witch. The girl decided that the witch was alive. The guy told the skeptical lady that as long as someone believes in the existence of strange stories, they will exist. The lady remembered that a couple of months ago she killed the Twilight Witch. The rabbit decided to increase his spiritual energy. The lady asked the guy if she was right after all. The interlocutor answered the lady that she was partly right. The guy showed his interlocutor 2 fingers and explained that they had 2 problems. The guy explained that the rabbit came to life before his owner and did not wait for him to resurrect. The rabbit began to act independently. The second problem is that the rabbit has now moved to the highest rank. The lady asked whether the rabbit received the extracted energy himself and whether he passed it on to his owner. The guy replied that the girl was right. The guy said meaningfully that the rabbit wanted to get out of the witch's control and decided to take her place himself. The lady was very surprised and worried after hearing the words. After thinking a little, the girl realized that the time had come to act very decisively. The lady turned around and prepared to leave. She decided to give instructions to her subordinate. The lady told the girl Flora to find out who Mr. Rabbit was in contact with. The girl replied that she would do everything. The main character woke up very much in his bed. He woke up, not yet understanding exactly what had happened. Lu Yu opened his eyes. He still thought with fear that he was still in the ill-fated room where the murder took place. Having caught his breath a little and calmed down, the guy suddenly jumped up on the bed. Lu Yu saw that he was in his room. He decided that he had dreamed about the rabbit and everything else. The guy thought excitedly to himself that his dream was extremely real. The main character looked at his watch. He realized that he had slept all day. Lu Yu began to rummage through his pockets, looking for his phone. He decided to order his own food. Suddenly the guy had something in his pocket that excited him very much. The main character found some piece of paper in his pocket. He did not understand that it was in his hands. With great excitement and shaking hands, the main character opened the piece of paper and looked at it. The main character saw in front of him a very familiar picture that he had received earlier from the rabbit. The guy was very surprised. He remembered to himself that he definitely did not take this leaflet from the rabbit. At this time the doorbell rang. Guy distracted from his thoughts. He was very excited. The guy was still holding the piece of paper in his hands. He felt that his life could now be in danger. Lu Yu looked at the door carefully. He didn't know if he should approach it and open it. The main character felt as if the guest behind the door telepathically said that he had found him and brought him death. The doorbell continued to ring insistently. The guy looked at the door in fear and excitement. The voice on the other side of the door said that if no one was home, he would go inside. The main character screamed in fear that he was inside and that no one should come in. After a short pause, the guest said from behind the door that if there was someone inside, it meant that he would come in. The main character, frightened, grabbed his talisman. He shouted that he was not alone in the apartment. Lu Yu remembered that he had a camera. He decided to use his phone to see who had come to him now. The main character found the right button on the phone. With it, he activated the camera near the door. The main character saw that a mystical rabbit was standing in front of the door. Lu Yu felt that the rabbit was telling him telepathically that he had found him and brought him death. The guy was very scared. He even dropped the phone from his hands onto the bed. At this time, the magical talisman that was next to the hero began to activate. At this time the guy was having fun with his girlfriends in a chic and romantic bar. The guy told the girls cheerfully that today they can try something new. One of the girls told the guy cheerfully that he was a bad person. The guy smiled and told his girlfriend very cheerfully that this was not true. At this time, something greatly worried the guy. He felt some kind of alarm signal. The guy jumped up in fear. The girlfriends were surprised. One of them asked what happened. The guy realized that the alarm he had installed on the talisman had gone off. That meant his brother was in danger. The guy grabbed his clothes. He needed to escape urgently. He asked his girlfriends for forgiveness. After this, the guy explained that he had an urgent matter and therefore he would leave the girls. the girlfriends were surprised. While running away, the guy promised his girlfriends goodbye that he would return soon. The guy ran and excitedly thought that he would soon arrive to help his brother. It was deep night over the city. In one of the buildings, people gathered to investigate the murder of a girl by a rabbit. A tall building in the city was the temporary base where Group A was located. The girl Flora stood surrounded by other employees. They were all busy investigating. Flora looked carefully at her smartphone. There was a geolocation sensor. Flora remembered the previous instruction from the mistress. She realized that the rabbit's next target could be the main character Liu Yubei. Flora realized that there was no time to waste. She immediately decided to call Mrs. Flora excitedly told the lady that they noticed a response from Mr. Rabbit near the main character's house. Team A is ready to head there. The mistress answered excitedly to her subordinate on the phone that she understood everything. After this, the mistress ordered Flora to act immediately and prevent the rabbit from escaping. Suddenly the mistress heard her subordinate Flora scream very loudly. The lady excitedly asked the girl Flora, what happened to her? Flora shouted excitedly that they weren't expecting something. After that the telephone connection was interrupted. Mrs. looked at her phone and thought. She realized that something bad had happened to her subordinates. After thinking a little, the mistress realized that with the help of ordinary methods she would not understand what happened to the Flora. The lady activated her skill called extrasensory perception. The lady saw how demonic entities were moving through the city in all its parts. As a result, the lady saw with the help of her perception a huge and dangerous demon. The lady realized that a fifth-rank spirit was heading to the other side of the city. After that, the lady really imagined what kind of destruction this demon could bring. The woman thought. She realized that if nothing was done, the dangerous spirit could destroy the entire city. After thinking a little, the mistress decided confidently to herself that she must destroy the demon. It was late at night. The main character was at home in his apartment. The corridor was empty, so the main character could no longer even wait for someone to help him. The demonic rabbit hit the door to the hero's apartment with all its might and knocked it down. The rabbit, holding the broken door in his hands, announced with a demonic laugh that he had arrived. The main character was very scared. He realized that the end had come for him, but he still hoped to come up with something. The guy looked to the side and noticed a magical talisman that his brother had given him earlier. Liu Yu remembered the unusual gift. He also remembered that his brother said that this gift could protect the guy. The main character forced himself to calm down. He decided to try to fight against the rabbit. Liu Yu reached out and picked up the gifted talisman. He decided to himself that his brother should not be offended. The main character decided to use a talisman. For him it was the only way out. The main character decided to himself that if he does not kill the rabbit, then it will definitely kill him. The rabbit climbed the stairs to the second floor, where the main character's bedroom was. When the rabbit climbed up the stairs, something surprised him very much. The main character swung and prepared to hit the rabbit with his magic talisman. Liu Yu, with the help of a powerful blow, was able to crush the rabbit, hitting him on the head with the talisman. The talisman turned out to be very useful. From the powerful blow, the magic rabbit flew down the stairs. The blow was so powerful that the rabbit was carried far away and his back hit the wall. The main character caught his breath a little and calmed down. He noticed that the rabbit's mask had fallen off its head. The main character looked very closely at the defeated rabbit. He saw that a man was lying on the floor, who had previously worn a rabbit mask. The main character was very scared and worried. He felt terrible because he had killed a man. The guy fell to the floor and screamed loudly in fear and fright. He felt bad. Calm down a little, the main character once again looked at the body of the defeated monster. Liu Yu noticed with surprise how a living eye, a jaw with teeth and a piece of wool jumped out of the monster. The main character looked in surprise at the revived body parts and did not understand what it was. The guy again excitedly thought to himself that he was most likely seeing some kind of magical visions again. The main character felt bad. He was scared and had difficulty breathing. At that time the lady was walking down the street. It was night, there was a strong wind and there was no one around. The lady saw as if various parts of destroyed monsters and demons were lying around. The girl walked confidently along the street with a cane. There were bodies of various monsters around. The lady looked around in surprise. She thought to herself that the S-rank spirit had disappeared. Looking to the side, the lady saw the girl Flora, who was lying barely alive. The girl Flora was lying near the wall and barely breathing. she was very badly injured. The lady ran up to the girl and hugged her. She asked with excitement, "What happened here?" The girl gathered her strength and looked at her mistress with a pleading look. Did Flora tearfully ask the mistress for forgiveness for failing? The lady, once again excited, asked the girl to tell her in detail what happened here. Flora said that they were attacked by a horde of level C and D stories. They were saved by a young girl who suddenly appeared. The lady was surprised to hear about the young girl. Flora said that the girl was short and had long hair. Stranger said her name is Red Scarf. The lady thought, could the unfamiliar girl be related to the energy of the S-rank spirit? The lady thought that the girl named Red Scarf might not be the one she thought about. At this time the guy came to the main character's house. He looked at the talisman with traces of blood. The guy looked carefully at the unconscious main character and said that this was not why he gave him the talisman. The brother sat for a long time smoking and silently looked at the main character lying on the floor. Unexpectedly the guy was happy to himself. He realized that things could have been much worse. The brother thought that it was very good that nothing tragic happened to Lu Yu. After that, the guy turned around and looked at the dead rabbit lying near the stairs. The guy annoyedly realized to himself that his brother had killed the wrong rabbit. The guy lit a cigarette and realized that everything that happened was an ordinary story from a rank. The guy stood and smoked. He thought about the consequences of everything that happened in this house. Having been a little distracted, the guy thought, are the night guards already heading here? The main character woke up in some desert of a post-apocalyptic world. All around he saw the ruins of human civilization. The main character stood on top of a skyscraper. A strong wind blew sandy dust around. Lu Yu was still just coming to his senses. It was difficult for him to understand where he could end up this time. Gradually the main character began to come to his senses. He opened his eyes and began to look around. The main character looked around in surprise. He couldn't understand where he was now. A huge and bright fiery explosion was heard not far away. The guy was a little blinded by the flash. Suddenly the flash became even brighter. The main character got scared and shielded himself from the fiery whirlwind with his hand. A red-haired, flaming woman emerged from the fire. She turned to the main character. The woman from the flames asked the main character if he had clothes. The guy looked in surprise at the woman who appeared to him. He didn't understand who she was. The fiery woman whispered that she could use some clothes. Tongues of flame rushed around her. The red-haired woman looked at the guy piercingly and said that they were now on a dead earth. The main character was physically in the hospital at that time. There were a lot of people and doctors around. The guy was lying unconscious on a large hospital bed. There was no one else in the room. The main character opened his eyes. He began to gradually come to his senses and look around. Lu Yu having regained consciousness, he sat down on the bed. He realized that he had a nightmare again. The main character decided to himself that each time the nightmares become stranger. Lu Yu looked around the room and realized that he was in the hospital. He began to remember the events of the previous night. Creepy images surfaced in the guy's mind. He recalled how he killed a rabbit with his talisman. The main character thought fearfully to himself that he killed a man last night. The girl's unexpectedly clear voice told the main character that the rabbit he had killed was not human. The main character stood up in surprise on the bed. He was amazed that someone had guessed his thoughts. The girl Flora told the main character that the murdered man with the rabbit mask was a C-rank story. The lady standing next to her added that the murdered mystical rabbit was actually a corpse. The lady said unequivocally that the main character did not kill anyone, but simply defended himself and fainted. The main character listened with surprise to his story from two girls unfamiliar to him. The lady asked the main character with interest to tell her everything about himself. Lu Yu could not understand what kind of two unfamiliar girls were standing in front of him and how they knew everything about him. Unexpectedly, the main character was very happy. He decided that strangers could heal him. The main character very quickly jumped out of bed and ran to the girls. The girl Flora was surprised and puzzled by how fast the guy ran up to them. Lu Yu kneeling next to the mistress, he said that they simply had to help him. The lady looked at the main character with surprise and listened to what he said. The main character began to talk about his problems that he had after the accident. At this time, the Flora girl swung her foot to kick him in the face. From a strong and unexpected kick from the girl, the guy flew into the wall. Flora threateningly told the bruised guy to listen to her carefully. The girl Flora menacingly asked the main character, how did he dare to paw her mistress? The main character was sitting on the bed and talking with the girls who walked towards him. Flora sternly asked the guy about his dreams about the rabbit and how the rabbit came to his house. The girls listened with great attention to everything that the main character told them. Flora quietly told his mistress that the time of Lu Yu's sleep coincides with the time of the girl's murder. After thinking a little and analyzing the information, the lady said that this was possible. The lady said that some people can see prophetic dreams when they are subject to fluctuations in psychic energy. Previously, such people were called prophets. After that, the lady said seriously to the main character that he was a vacuum piece for stories. The mistress told the guy that she was recruiting new candidates for the night guards. After that, the lady said very importantly to the main character that Mr. Rabbit was now watching him. Lu Yu will receive protection if she does everything she tells him. The main character asked in surprise what stories and night terrors were just told to him. The lady explained that stories are the creatures that live in their world. If someone believes in them, then they turn into real monsters. The lady explained that monsters try to exploit human fears. The night guards are busy destroying monsters. Lu Yu thought dissatisfied to himself that the girls who came would definitely not help him. At first the guy thought that a government organization had come to him. In reality they turned out to be ordinary fanatics. The lady strictly ordered the main character to stay in the hospital. The lady and her girlfriend Flora prepared to leave. She said that the main character is completely safe here. After a long conversation with the main character, the girls left the room and closed the door. The lady is tired. After the conversation, she stood near the door and caught her breath. Unexpectedly, a woman asked the girls from the side if they had finished yet. The woman's name was Anqing. She reported that she found an interesting thing after opening it. Mrs. Flora and the girl were very surprised. They reviewed the autopsy results. The lady noticed that on the body of the killed rabbit in the main character's house there was a tattoo of the Eclipse Guild. Anqing explained that such a tattoo is used as a sign to control people like puppets. Anqing added that the rabbit costume was not chosen by chance, but that the organizers of the murder screwed up. Flora said excitedly that Eclipse is a big criminal organization. They are busy experimenting with strange stories. The lady became agitated and worried. She squeezed the report she was holding in her hands with all her might. The lady thought excitedly to herself that she would have to fight against the Eclipse organization. Late in the evening, Anqing and the lady decided to have an important meeting. In a large conference room, a guy was sitting at the table, and opposite him was Anqing and Mrs. The protagonist's brother listened to the words from the girls and irritably slammed his hand on the table. The irritated and annoyed guy shouted threateningly to the girls that he was against their proposal. Anqing reminded the guy that they don't have enough people. She added that Lu Yu's abilities could help them a lot. The guy shouted excitedly that all these are not enough reasons why the main character should join them. After that, the guy excitedly said that Lu Yu was still very young and he should live. The interlocutors sat at the table and were silent. The guy looked carefully at the lady. Anqing smoked quietly. The guy remembered that the lady's age is younger than that of the main character. The guy was undecided. He did not want to agree to the proposal from the girls. At the same time, the guy understood that Lu Yu could help them a lot in their business. At the end of the conversation the guy stood up and walked to the side. He shouted that he was still against it. Anqing smoked silently. The lady shouted and called the main character's brother to her. The guy turned around dissatisfied and asked the lady, what else does she want? The lady told strictly the guy that if he doesn't want to involve Lu Yu in their affairs, then he should solve his problems himself. The guy hesitated. He understood that he would need the organization's help. After that, the protagonist's brother turned around and confidently headed towards the exit. In parting the guy shouted, so that no one tells him what to do. After leaving, the guy slammed the door loudly. The girls remained silently sitting at the table. Anqing, after a long pause, said that the guy loves his brother very much. Night fell over the city. It was dark all around and the streets were deserted. On the outskirts of the city, some guy in a garage was having a meeting with a rabbit. The guy sternly asked the rabbit, why haven't they revived the witch yet? The guy, sitting on the sofa, said that the night guards were already looking for them. He warned the rabbit that he would not tolerate any more failures. After a short pause, the guy said threateningly to the rabbit that he would no longer help him. The rabbit got very angry. He kicked the barrel with all his might, so that it fell apart. The rabbit reminded the guy that he had always shared spiritual energy with him, and now he wanted to cheat him. The rabbit asked the guy angrily, does he really think that energy grows on trees? After that, the rabbit angrily said that all their problems were because of the main character. The rabbit angrily asked why the main character couldn't just die. On the outskirts of the city, military men blocked the road. They were guarding an important facility. At the top of the lighthouse stood the Anqing girl with her mistress. The military guarded them vigilantly. The Anqing girl smoked and silently looked at the lady with great interest. Anqing asked the lady with interest why she used A-rank items to protect the main character. The lady very importantly explained that all this was being done in case the rabbit decided to complete the job. Anqing was amused by this answer. At this time, one military man ran up with an urgent report. The military reported that a large amount of energy had been detected nearby in the northeast. Maybe the target is there. The lady answered the military man with concentration that she fully understood his report. At this time, suspicious demonic activity began in the forest. In the thicket of the forest, the eyes of a huge flock of various monsters and demons began to glow. A whole flock of evil demons rushed at the people standing nearby. The lady standing above warned the military to be careful, as the monsters were breaking through. The lady commanded the military that she fully confirmed the location of the target. After that, the mistress decided not to waste time. She jumped down from the height of the lighthouse. The girl in flight shouted that she was starting to act. She flew down at high speed. Having landed, the lady began to destroy the demons with great speed and professionalism. The girl, using a sword, chopped at the sides of the heads of the monsters running up to her. After the battle, the lady decided to tell the rest of the warriors that today they did an important thing. The lady belligerently told her subordinates that they would destroy the rabbit. The warriors said that they would do so. Anqing looked down from above. She thought to herself that it's always beautiful when she fights with stories. The Anqing girl smoked calmly, standing safely above. She was thinking about something of her own. Anqing thought with interest to herself, what is the main character doing now? At this time, a window was open in the main character's hospital bay. Someone else came there. The main character's bed was empty. He was kidnapped very easily and simply. The stranger freely kidnapped the main character from his room and carried him on his shoulder. The kidnapper was very surprised that the main character was left without protection. The stranger was very happy. He realized that his work was now completely done. The kidnapper thought to himself that for now, let the rabbit's team play a little more with the protagonist's friends. After that their plan will be completed. The main character, without a memory, was transported to an abandoned building in the forest. The guy was lying unconscious on the tiles on the floor. His body looked lifeless. Gradually, the guy's consciousness began to return. He opened his eyes and began to look around. Having gathered his strength, Lu Yu sat down on the floor. He felt his head pounding. The guy looked around. The surrounding interior surprised and alarmed him. The guy saw furniture around. He remembered that he should be in the hospital now. Lu Yu thought that he was most likely in the hotel. He decided that he was dreaming again. Unexpectedly, the main character was surprised to see a stranger behind him. The kidnapper ran up to the main character and quickly grabbed him by the collar. The main character was very scared and screamed. He realized that he could not escape. Lu Yu realized that he was definitely not dreaming all this. He asked the stranger what he needed. The kidnapper was silent. The main character, scared, asked the stranger to let him go. The kidnapper angrily told the main character that he was in an abandoned hotel and could scream as much as he wanted. The main character was very scared. Suddenly he heard something click loudly to the side. The frightened guy heard someone scream somewhere from the depths. Lu Yu turned around. He noticed how the door to a huge and long dungeon opened. The main character was very scared. He could not understand what the dungeon next to him was. The kidnapper angrily told the main character that now something would happen to him. The guy shouted to the main character that it was time for them to have fun. Lu Yu was very frightened and numb. He was scared and didn't know what to do. At this time, the soldiers were fighting against hordes of zombies that attacked them. The soldiers shot the monsters with pistols, who continued to advance. The hordes of monsters continued to advance. The soldiers fired back from all sides. One evil monster with burning eyes wanted to attack the warriors from behind. The girl soldier reacted very quickly, turned around and shot at the monster. The lady with her sword bravely rushed to the aid of the fighting warriors. The girl, using a merciless sword, chopped down the monsters running around. After the battle and the destruction of all the monsters, the lady sheathed her sword. The girl soldier looked at her mistress in surprise. The lady ordered the soldiers to start cleaning. The lady looked around and said that everything around her seemed very strange. Anqing noticed this too. The lady said excitedly that she no longer felt the rabbit's spiritual energy. Anqing told the lady to look at the corpse that was lying in front of them on the earth. Anqing pointed to the tattoo on the corpse's body and said that this was the problem. The rabbit could share its energy and then escape. Suddenly a very bright glow appeared from somewhere. The lady was very surprised. The glow also struck the Anqing girl, who was standing very close. The girls looked up with great surprise and fear. They didn't understand what exactly was happening. Anqing and the lady saw a reddish ray of flame descending from the sky. The lady said excitedly that they are now seeing the descent of spiritual energy. Anqing said in a resigned voice that they see the appearance of a witch. At this time the main character was himself in a dark and creepy basement. Just 20 minutes before the witch descended from the sky, Lu Yu was tightly tied in the basement. The main character tried to free himself, but he failed. He had a severe headache. Suddenly the guy saw a bright glow. A ball of fire similar to an egg appeared next to him. The main character was very surprised and amazed. He did not understand what was in front of him now. The bound Lu Yu saw the kidnapper approaching him, holding a fiery egg in his hands. The guy told the main character that he had been waiting for this day for a very long time. Thanks to the rabbit's diligence, he was able to reach the end without lifting a finger. The kidnapper sat down in front of the main character and wanted to tell him something important. After that, the kidnapper brought the egg to the guy's face and said that it was time to revive the Twilight Witch. The main character was scared and amazed. He mentally screamed at the kidnapper to wait. The main character closed his eyes out of fear. He was ready that the witch's incarnation would now begin before him. At this time, ropes began to appear from somewhere below from the sewer grates. Lu Yu was very surprised. He noticed that the ropes began to fly past him towards the stranger. The kidnapper was surprised and scared. Suddenly the ropes began to bind him. Ropes flew out from all the openings of the sewer and began to tie the kidnapper hand and foot. When one of the ropes grabbed the stranger's hand, he dropped a fiery egg on the floor. After the fall, the fire egg fell to the floor and rolled to the side. The kidnapper was very scared and worried. He realized that he had fallen into his own trap. At this time a rabbit was coming down the stairs. He told his accomplice angrily that he was right. The rabbit flashed his burning eyes and told the guy that he wanted to throw him from the very beginning. Kidnap looked angrily at the rabbit and said that he copied his trap. The main character was surprised to realize that the rabbit from his dream was standing in front of him, but something had changed in him. The demonic rabbit said that he was so full now that he could now leave without any problems. The guy thought angrily to himself, how could his accomplice the rabbit understand everything? After that he was kidnapped and realized that he no longer had a choice. He loosened his hand a little and prepared to attack. The guy shouted menacingly to the rabbit that he would die here. He launched a swarm of magical insects at him. The rabbit stood and looked absolutely calmly at the huge flock of insects. The insects completely unhooked the rabbit from all sides and it turned into one big buzzing cocoon. The kidnapper joyfully shouted to the rabbit that the end had come and called him a bastard. The insects surrounded the rabbit on all sides in a dense heap. It looked like he had already been eaten. Suddenly, from the pile of insects, the cheerful laughter of an evil rabbit was heard. The kidnapper was very shocked. He could not understand that the rabbit had survived under a swarm of insects. Suddenly the demonic rabbit jumped up. After the transfiguration he became much larger and more dangerous. Wasting no time, the evil bunny sped up to attack his former Monday. The kidnapper was scared. He saw a huge rabbit in front of him and realized that he could not cope with it. A demonic rabbit with flaming hands was preparing to crush the kidnapper. The guy was scared. He stood there in a daze and could not defend himself in any way. The evil rabbit put all his strength into his powerful punch. The kidnapper flew to the side, fell to the ground from a powerful blow. He was very badly injured and developed a bloody cough. The main character realized that the ropes that were holding his hands suddenly fell off. The guy realized that he was now completely free and could escape from the basement. The main character felt completely free. He realized that it was time to run away. Suddenly the guy got scared. He heard someone calling his name. The main character turned around. There was no one around. There was a fiery egg at the back. Lu Yu turned back and saw how the rabbit continued to attack her former accomplice. The main character realized that the fiery egg was calling him to his name. The guy absolutely clearly heard someone from the fiery egg asking him to accept her power. The fiery egg continued to call out to the main character and demand that he take its power. The main character was very surprised. He couldn't believe that this thing could talk to him. In the end, Lu Yu decided that he had imagined something again. He decided to ignore it and just leave. After that, the main character calmly headed towards the exit. He needed to save himself. Suddenly the main character heard a loud and frightening demonic laugh behind him. A huge rabbit approached the guy from behind and pierced him right through with its claws. The main character did not have time to defend himself. The blow from the rabbit was fatal for him. The demonic rabbit shouted joyfully that it was all over. The rabbit said very pleased that it was extremely easy for him. The main character fell exhausted. The rabbit angrily asked the main character, did he really decide that he would let him go? The main character was lying exhausted on the floor. He heard the rabbit shout joyfully that the last preparation was finished. After that, the demonic rabbit laughed an evil laugh that echoed throughout the basement. The rabbit laughed joyfully and shouted that now he could get out of control. After that, the rabbit looked to the side and remembered that he needed to take the witch's vessel. The demonic beast extended its clawed paw towards the magical vessel. The rabbit grabbed the vessel and shouted that from now on he would become the most powerful creature. At this time, the kidnapper woke up from behind. With difficulty he approached the rabbit from behind and called him. The demonic rabbit was amazed. He already thought that his former Monday was dead. At this time, the guy launched a swarm of mystical insects against the demonic beast. The demonic rabbit was very scared. He realized that he would not be able to withstand the new attack of insects. The rabbit could not withstand another attack. He missed the magic vessel and flew to the side. The demonic beast received a very strong blow. He lay on the ground and caught his breath. The rabbit angrily asked the guy, where did he get such great strength? The former accomplice calmly answered the rabbit that he was completely right about his strength. The guy laughed evilly and said that he was hiding his power and now he has AB rank. The kidnapper angrily shouted to the rabbit that he would never see the witch's rebirth. Consciousness returned to the main character. He began to gradually come to his senses. Lu Yu felt a little strength in himself. He cleared his throat and tried to get up. The main character lay down on his side. He felt that he was in great pain due to the severe wound. The guy whispered to himself that he didn't want to die, since he didn't even have a girlfriend. The main character was lying on the floor. Visions from his memory appeared before him. He remembered his father. The father held young Lu Yu in his arms and said that he would succeed in everything in life. In a joyful voice, the father told his surprised son that he had his whole life ahead of him. The main character lay exhausted due to a severe wound on the floor. He wanted to say something, but couldn't. At that time, the guy heard a calm voice tell him that he would soon die. Lu Yu whispered that he could not die. A female voice told the guy that his spiritual energy was at 0. The voice answered the guy that every person has his own time. Lu Yu has met death and should know that death is the cycle of life. The main character shouted to his interlocutor that he no longer wanted to be human and that she would help him. After this, the main character told his interlocutor that he was ready to sacrifice his soul. The main character said that he could give his interlocutor her virginity. A voice shouted at the guy to shut up. The interlocutor commanded the guy that if he didn't want to die, then let him turn his head. The main character turned to the side. He saw a huge burning vessel in the shape of an egg. The voice told the guy that if he swallowed the witch's vessel, he would survive, but would lose his humanity. The voice is very stern. I asked the guy if he agreed to such conditions. The main character thought. He pondered what humanity meant to him. The guy felt more confident. He decided it was still worth a try. The main character crawled decisively and headed towards the magic vessel. The guy was crawling on the floor with all his strength. He encouraged himself with words. It was very difficult for Lu Yu to move. He left a long trail of blood behind him. The main character looked at the magic vessel. He realized that there was no way back. There was very little left. Now the guy just had to stretch out his hand to the vessel. The fiery magic vessel was almost there. The guy prepared to grab him. The main character happily thought to himself that he would still live. He reached his hand to the vessel. At this time, the kidnapper continued to finish off the demonic rabbit in the corner of the basement. The guy finished off the mystical monster with glowing eyes with powerful blows. The delighted guy angrily and cheerfully shouted to the rabbit that he would die today. The demonic beast angrily shouted back to the guy that he was a bastard. At this time, a very powerful and bright fiery explosion was heard behind the guy's back. The kidnapper turned around in surprise. He could not understand what had happened. He even forgot about the rabbit. Behind the guy and the rabbit lying on the floor, a huge fire whirlwind was raging. The main character stood healed on his feet, surrounded by large pillars of fire. The rabbit fearfully realized that the main character was using energy from the witch's vessels. He could not understand how an ordinary person could do this. The main character stood and gained strength. He cleared his throat little by little, standing surrounded by fire. A powerful fire surrounded by the main character burned the remains of his clothes. Liu Yu felt a strong burning sensation. The strong fire burned his clothes and the remnants of his humanity. The demonic rabbit looked at the protagonist's transformation angrily and excitedly. The rabbit shouted angrily to the main character, "How dare he steal his energy?" The main character stood in a fiery whirlwind. He no longer felt absolutely anything. At this time, a woman approached the main character from behind the flame. The woman said quietly from behind to the main character that she urgently needed clothes. Liu Yu absolutely calmly answered the woman that they could buy her clothes later. The main character confidently told the stranger with red hair that they would buy any clothes she liked. The evil rabbit and his accomplice looked at everything that was happening with great surprise and fear. A huge fire whirlwind reached the demonic rabbit and the guy standing next to him. The fire spread throughout the building of a lonely abandoned hotel. After this, a very strong explosion was heard in the hotel building. Glass flew out from everywhere. The hotel room was on fire. Fire was everywhere. The fire always raged throughout all the rooms. Everything around was engulfed in strong flames. After a strong explosion, the demonic rabbit lay unconscious on the floor. The evil rabbit became furious. He realized that all his efforts had been in vain. The amazed rabbit looked at the huge fire whirlwind that raged in front of him. At the same time, someone's hand appeared from the pile of fire. She wasn't burned. The figure of a young girl with long red hair appeared from the fire. The girl walked out with a light step from the wall of fire that surrounded her. Her body was absolutely young and undamaged. The girl looked young and absolutely as if reborn from a flame. The girl stood as if in an unconscious state. Everything around was on fire. After that the girl opened her eyes. They were fiery red. The fire girl looked at the demonic rabbit still standing in front of her. At this time, the lady and the Anshin girl ran up to the building of the burning hotel. The lady was very surprised and frightened when she saw a powerful explosion coming from the hotel. The girl stood near the hotel and looked at the huge flames escaping from the building. Anshin looked carefully at the raging flames. She decided that the rabbit had already moved to the next level. The lady was very surprised and frightened. She realized that a new witch had appeared. A powerful fiery explosion knocked out the roof of the hotel and rose very far and high up. After that, the fire whirlwind returned from heaven and hit the fountain, which was located next to the hotel on the ground. A transformed young girl emerged from the fiery tornado. She prepared to come down to earth. A naked red-haired girl descended from the fire into the center of a dried-up fountain. The flames were still raging around the girl. She stood in the circle of the fountain with her eyes closed. The red-haired girl stood near the destroyed hotel. The kidnapper was still in the building. From above, from the ruins of the hotel, the guy was still watching the burning girl. The kidnapper was very angry and frustrated. He realized that everything did not go according to his plan. The guy thought angrily to himself that the rabbit had ruined everything and he could no longer defeat the new monster. The guy realized that he couldn't do anything anymore and it was time for him to leave. The hotel building began to collapse. Stones and fragments of ceilings were falling everywhere. Suddenly a huge rabbit's foot appeared. He managed to grab himself and climb out onto the surviving top of the hotel. After that, the demonic rabbit very quickly jumped from above to the floor below. The rabbit was burned on all sides, but he was angry and ready to fight further. From the height of the hotel, the rabbit watched the red-haired girl in the burning circle. The rabbit looked with surprise and interest at the girl burning on the ground below. The rabbit said that the girl's power had not yet stabilized. This means that she has not yet awakened. The demonic beast happily thought to himself that he still had the opportunity. The rabbit pulled out a piece of rebar sticking out of the concrete. He decided to use it as a weapon. After that, the rabbit flew down from the top of the hotel at full speed. he hoped he still had a chance. The rabbit angrily shouted to the young fiery girl that she was going to die. After that, the evil rabbit swung to hit the girl with the reinforcement. The demonic beast was greatly shocked. His blow did no harm. The rabbit watched as the rod melted in his hands. The demonic beast was greatly shocked. The amazed rabbit could not understand, how could the girl melt the rest of his rod? At this time, the girl noticed that a rabbit had decided to attack her. She began to turn towards him. The girl extended her hand towards the rabbit and prepared to attack him. After that, a fire whirlwind flew from the red-haired girl in the direction of the rabbit. The burning rabbit was amazed. He couldn't believe that the girl was able to wake up so quickly. The demonic beast was surprised by the enormous power that came from the girl. The rabbit extended his burning paw to the girl. He really wanted to take her power for himself. The demonic beast menacingly and angrily shouted to the girl that he wanted to take her power for himself. The rabbit's body continued to burn. Through the flames he shouted to the girl to wait. The red-haired girl calmly looked at the burning demonic rabbit. The rabbit disappearing into the flames shouted that he could still get what was his. The demonic beast's last words were burned in the fire along with its remains. Anqing stood near a burning hotel and talked to someone on the phone. She asked them to come quickly. The Anqing girl ended the call and turned off the phone. She wanted to say something to the lady. Anqing said that she had already reported everything to the top. Now they will just have to wait a little. The lady was very agitated and angry. She realized that a witch could appear in the flames. The frightened lady realized that the witch could destroy the entire city overnight. The lady asked Anqing if she felt anything. The girl asked, "What exactly?" The lady said that the spiritual energy of the witch is still just being formed. The lady told her colleague very confidently and strictly that they cannot wait. After that, the lady took the sword out of its sheath. She prepared to fight. Anqing was very surprised by the madam's actions. She didn't understand what she was doing. Anqing asked the lady to wait a little. The lady shouted that she was ready to fight. The lady angrily and bravely shouted, holding a sword in her hands, that she would destroy the witch. Anqing excitedly shouted after the lady that they just needed to wait a little. Anqing shouted to the girl that she could not cope with the witch. The lady prepared to activate the spell. The lady hit the ground with all her strength with her sword, and after that the mythical transformation skill began. Anqing excitedly shouted to the girl to listen to her. The lady continued to activate the spell at this time. The lady, with her magical abilities, continued to increase her spell skill to the second level. As a result, after a magic spell, the lady had 4 metal legs like a horse. After the end of the magical transformation, the lady turned into a rider. Anqing excitedly shouted to the lady that they didn't even know who they were fighting against. The lady transformed into a horseman shouted that if not now, then never. Anqing was very shocked and frightened. She did not understand the excessive bravery of her lady. The lady heard her girlfriend screaming from behind, but she decided not to stop. The lady rider prepared to ride to fight against the witch. Anqing shouted to the lady to wait. The lady was running at full speed. Anqing's screams were heard somewhere behind. Anqing stopped and looked after the lady rider who had galloped off. After a short pause, Anqing ran after her friend. She said to herself that the lady, as usual, did not listen to her. At this time, Madame Rider was rushing at full speed towards the burning hotel. The lady rider rode to the hotel. Everything around was still in flames. The lady began to swing her sword in all directions, making her way further. The lady rider looked around carefully. She looked everywhere for the witch. After that, the lady looked to the side and saw a burning witch there. The lady looked with excitement and delight at the witch burning nearby. The mistress carefully examined the flaming red-haired girl and realized that she definitely saw a witch in front of her. The lady rider, full of determination, accelerated and prepared to attack the witch. The burning girl looked to the side. She noticed her mistress approaching her. The red-haired witch was very easily able to repel the blow of the sword that the lady rider dealt to her. The lady was surprised and amazed at the enormous power that emanated from the witch. The red-haired witch attacked the mistress with the help of a powerful fire whirlwind. After a retaliatory powerful fiery attack, the lady rider was carried far back. The lady became angry and agitated. She could not crush the witch with one blow. After a short pause, the mistress looked angrily at the witch and prepared to launch a second attack. The lady grabbed her sword and swung it for another attack against the witch. The lady was jumping next to the witch and waving her magic sword in all directions. The witch prepared to respond by attacking her rival with fiery whirlwinds. The witch launched a huge powerful wave of fire against the Lady Rider. The fiery wave reached the lady at high speed and began to throw her aside. The Lady Rider could not resist the influx of a huge wave of fire. From the powerful fiery blow, the lady was thrown to the side and she could not resist. The mistress was very seriously injured from the strong blow. She felt bad and could not get up. The Lady Rider lay on her side on the ground. She did not notice that the witch was gradually walking towards her. The lady no longer had the strength to get up. She lay on the ground, barely catching her breath. At that time, the mistress felt that someone approached her. It was a red-haired witch. Madame Rider noticed that the flaming witch was already standing very close to her. After that, the witch swung her leg to hit the lying mistress with all her might. The Lady Rider no longer had the strength to resist or somehow defend herself from the witch. From a very strong blow from the witch, the lady flew far to the side in the direction of the forest. In flight, the lady broke through several trees with her and flew into the thicket. After landing, the lady remained lying on the ground without moving. Broken trees were smoking all around. The girl lay on the ground motionless after the fall. She lost her magical armor and was no longer a rider. The lady did not even have the strength to turn around. She was lying on the ground on her side next to the sword. Gradually the lady began to come to her senses. She was lying on the ground and just breathing heavily. The lady was frightened and realized that she had lost her armor. She would no longer be able to fully fight against the witch. At this time, the flaming witch approached the mistress and swung her leg to hit her. With a weakening gaze, the girl looked at her rival and realized that everything was over for her. The lady, lying on the ground, looked into the burning eyes of the witch and realized that she was no longer capable of anything. At this time, the flaming witch swung her leg to deliver the final blow. Suddenly the witch felt like scalpels were flying at her from the side and stabbing into her body. The witch glanced to the side. The Anqing girl, holding knives in her hands, shouted threateningly to the witch that her life was in her hands. After this, Anqing, still threatening, suggested that the witch break up on good terms. After that, Anqing launched several knives in a sweeping direction in the direction of the witch. Unexpectedly the witch very quickly jumped to the side. The knives hit the ground past her. The Anqing girl did not even notice how the witch suddenly appeared behind her. Then the witch grabbed Anqing's hand with her hand in a dead and strong grip. After that, the witch grabbed Anqing's head with her hand and threw it to the ground. As a result, Anqing found herself lying on the ground, and the witch was sitting on top of her. Frightened Anqing could not understand why the witch had not killed her yet. Anqing couldn't even raise her head. The witch leaned on her with all her might. Anqing said she was just joking. She asked the witch what she would do with her. The witch's eyes burned with a merciless fire. Anqing shouted to the witch to wait. Anqing shouted at the witch to stop. The witch put her hand to the girl's head. There was a very strong fiery explosion. The witch completely neutralized the girl. Clouds of fire continued to blaze around the witch. The Anqing girl no longer showed any signs of life. Anqing girl's body was completely burned after a crushing witch attack. Having dealt with Anqing, the red-haired witch stood up and turned to the side. The frightened and weakened lady watched with great fear as her friend Anqing died. The lady did not have the strength to move normally. She stood leaning on her sword. The lady looked at the dead body of her former girlfriend Anqing with great sadness. The mistress stood and looked at the still burning witch. At this time the witch began to take knives out of her chest. The witch was absolutely calm. The wound did no harm. She calmly took out knives from herself. Having cleared her body of knives, the witch turned her gaze towards the mistress. The exhausted mistress looked with a hateful gaze at the witch standing next to her. The girl sadly realized to herself that the witch would be too tough for her. At this time, the main character in the body of a girl found himself on the roof of a skyscraper in a post-apocalyptic world. The main character was surprised. He could not understand how he could be transported to this world so quickly. The main character looked around carefully and realized that he had already been here before. After some thought, Lu Yu remembered his recent vision when he entered this world. The main character very clearly remembered that he had already seen the red-haired witch. Suddenly Lu Yu felt to himself that he felt very cold. Having looked around, the main character noticed that he was in the body of a girl and was wearing a light dress. The main character carefully examined his body and realized that he had completely transformed. A little scared, Lu Yu fully realized that he had turned into a woman. After that, the main character went to the railing of the balcony and called the red-haired witch to him. The main character shouted angrily that he was offering her his soul and virginity. At the same time, for some reason she turned him into a woman. At this time, a huge fire whirlwind flew across the sky. The main character became wary. The whirlwind brought a young girl in a long dark dress to the roof of the building. The girl with a smile told the main character that he would soon get used to his new body. The main character irritably ran up to his new stranger with a very fast step. The stranger was surprised when Lu Yu extended his maiden hand to her and grabbed her by the clothes. The main character shouted angrily to his interlocutor that he didn't even have a girlfriend, and now he became one himself. The girl gently pushed the main character away and said that she still had something to tell him. The main character offendedly asked the stranger, where did his male organs go? The girl was surprised. She began to get tired of stupid questions from the main character. After that, the girl grabbed the protagonist's face with her hands and said that he could return to his world and live an ordinary life. Then the stranger, looking piercingly into Lu Yu's eyes, shouted for him to run, since he had already become history. The girl continued to tell the surprised main character to run away and, most importantly, not kill anyone. The stranger ordered the main character to return to the hospital and pretend that nothing had happened. After that, the girl began to gradually disappear. She strictly told the main character not to tell anyone about her. Lu Yu turned and excitedly noticed that the girl's hand was dissolving into space. The stranger no longer had time to talk to her interlocutor and she began to disappear. The girl reminded the boss not to reveal his identity. She added that he would return to his appearance at sunrise. At the end, the stranger wanted to say something else that would happen to Lu a couple of times a month. The excited protagonist no longer heard the last words that the girl uttered. The main character was scared and worried. He didn't hear something important. Lu Yu tried to call the stranger again. The main character demanded that the disappearing stranger first agree that she would be with him a couple of times a month. Lu Yu shouted very excitedly with all his might, trying to find out what would happen to him on certain days of the month. After that, the stranger completely dissolved. The main character was very irritated and agitated. He continued to stand on the roof of the skyscraper. At this time, the lady and the witch were still near the burning hotel. The lady had no strength to attack or resist any longer. She could barely stand on her feet, leaning on her sword. The witch stood without any emotion. The witch's eyes were burning, and tongues of flame were still spreading around her. She stood silently. After a very long pause, the red-haired witch closed her eyes for a long time. After this, the flames around the witch intensified sharply. She began to change. The lady looked with surprise and fear at everything that was happening to the witch. The lady thought to herself in fear that the witch next to her had awakened. At this time, the color of the hair on the witch's head began to change from red to light. The lady pulled herself together. She felt that the witch posed a great danger to her. The lady, holding the sword in her hands, decided to rush forward. She understood that she could not kill the witch. The lady ran belligerently and realized that she would now at least try to detain the witch. At this time, the lady was surprised to notice that the fire around the witch had disappeared, and her hair had turned white. The witch's face was completely calm. The eyes were brown and no longer burned with fire. The witch looked absolutely harmless and did not cause any more fear. The lady was greatly amazed at the changes in the witch's appearance. Her warlike ardor immediately subsided. The witch stood and looked at her rival with an absolutely innocent gaze. After that, the witch took off from the ground and began to gradually fly up, surrounded by flames. The lady looked with great surprise at the witch rising up. The girl realized that there was no way she could not kill or detain the witch this time. The witch absolutely calmly and impartially looked down at her rival. After that, the witch raised her hand to show some kind of gesture to the lady on earth. In parting, the witch winked cheerfully and showed a positive gesture for the girl on earth. The lady was surprised. She did not expect such a strange and unusual reaction from the transformed witch. After that, the witch said goodbye loudly and flew away into the night sky. The mistress only managed to shout for the witch to wait. The girl was left surprised and completely discouraged on earth. The lady could not understand how the witch could just fly away. The fire above the hotel continued to rage without stopping. Mrs. left all alone. The exhausted girl fell to her knees on the ground. The disappearance of the witch surprised her. The lady was very exhausted. She never thought that her battle with the witch would end so easily. The girl was exhausted, falling to the ground. She was still thinking why the witch didn't kill her. All the events that happened exhausted the lady so much that she fell unconscious. At this time the night rose over the city, evening life was in full swing. Many guests gathered in one of the nightclubs. Loud music could be heard from everywhere. There were many guests in the basement of the club and they were all having fun. Among the guests there were only men. They drank and watched the dancing girl. A girl with bunny ears danced near a pole to loud music. The dancer was in a black seductive outfit. She shouted to the audience that she loved them. Next to the girl there were several more of the same dancers with rabbit ears on their heads. The girl danced happily to the music and smiled at all the clients in the hall. At this time, unexpectedly, a magical tattoo on the girl's back was activated. The dancer felt very unwell. She began to lose strength and stopped. The girl fell exhausted near the pole. The spectators were very surprised and worried. The girl was getting worse and worse. She started coughing blood right on stage. One of the guards was very surprised and worried when he saw the fallen girl. After that, the guard ordered his subordinates to quickly help the girl. Some of the spectators had already suggested that the girl had died. Others felt sorry for the dancer and said that she was beautiful. The guard grabbed the exhausted girl by the hand and shouted for her to get up. The security guard told the audience with a smile that the girl was not feeling well. He offered all the guests free drinks as an apology. The guards brought the exhausted dancer girl into her dressing room. The drooping girl was sitting on a chair. Surprised and excited guards stood nearby. One of the guards shouted to his colleague to quickly bring water for the girl. The security guard looked at the girl and said displeasedly that all sorts of problems happen on his shift. After some time, the girl began to wake up. A lilac fog appeared around her. The girl's eyes opened. Negative demonic energy began to flow from her body. The girl started screaming. The guard was very surprised. He didn't understand what was happening here. The worried guard ran up to the girl and asked what was happening to her. The dancer began to develop supernatural powers. The lilac fog continued to swirl around. After that, the girl extended her hand to the guard's head. I was very surprised here. Unexpectedly, the dancer jumped to her feet, full of strength, and grabbed the guard's head with her palm. The guard didn't have time to do anything. The dancer squeezed his face with her hand with all her might. The girl's strength gradually increased. She decided to kill the guard right here. After powerful pressure, the guard's head shattered into small pieces. The excited dancer sat in front of the body of the guard lying on the floor in front of her. After a short pause, the girl, full of demonic power, jumped to her feet. At this time, real white rabbit ears began to grow from the girl's head. The artificial ears fell off the girl's head. She turned into a rabbit. The transformed girl laughed loudly with an evil and demonic laugh. The dancer angrily and displeasedly said to herself that the witch had stolen her vessel. After that, the girl seemed to whisper that the witch could already be waiting. Her hand tensed. An image of a demonic rabbit appeared above the dancer. She shouted that she would soon come for the witch. It was deep night over the hospital building. There were practically no people around anymore. At this time a fiery tornado flew from the sky. It was the main character who was heading towards the hospital building. The flight speed was very high. Lu Yu screamed loudly in fear and excitement. The main character could not understand how he could land after flying to the hospital. The flying Lu Yu brightly illuminated the night sky. He was already approaching the roof of the hospital. The main character hit the hospital at full speed. He did not get inside but hit the dome. After the flight, Lu Yu lay flat on the dome. He couldn't understand what it was in front of him. The main character flew from the height of the dome down to the ground. He screamed loudly in fright. After falling from a great height, the main character fell into the forest thickets nearby. After falling to the ground, Lu Yu began to gradually walk into himself and look around. The main character in the body of a witch was lying in the green thickets. He was still recovering from the fall. Lu Yu finally came to his senses and wondered what had just happened to him. The main character looked closely and noticed that the hospital was surrounded by a powerful magical dome. Lu Yu remembered the words of the stranger who said that he would be like under the dome in the hospital. The main character could not understand what he should do next with the young girl's body. At this time, morning came and the sun began to descend over the horizon and illuminate the area. The main character felt embarrassed in the body of a girl in the daylight near the hospital. Lu Yu felt something strange when the rays of the sun began to fall on his body. Very suddenly, the body in which the main character was located began to burn in the sunlight. Very quickly the entire body of the main character was engulfed in fire. He screamed heartrendingly and in fear. The main character was surrounded by flames and shouted loudly that he was burning. Gradually the fire began to die out. The main character found himself in his own body of an 18-year-old boy. Having calmed down, Liu Yu looked around and noticed that he saw himself in his usual body and clothes. The main character was happy. He realized that the stranger and the establishment had not deceived him and he returned his body. The guy realized that he could not waste time. He rose to his feet and headed towards the hospital. With a confident movement, the main character extended his hand and pressed the entry button near the hospital. Liu Yu stood near the front door. She still did not open up to him. The main character thought to himself joyfully that it was very good that he stuck to his guns. After this, unpleasant memories flooded over the main character. Liu Yu was disappointed. He couldn't understand why he was kidnapped. After all, he was just an ordinary student. At this time, two girls were moving in a car at very high speed. The beaten lady looked at her companion Anqing and said that she looked very good. Anqing replied happily and proudly that she was the spirit-bearer of the Ghost King's zombie bride. After that, Anqing added that she has increased regeneration, but for her, everything is not so simple. After that, Anqing turned to her companion and said that it was very good that they were able to survive. The lady, in a guilty voice, asked her friend for forgiveness for getting her involved. The main character's brother was driving. He asked the lady, why didn't the witch kill her? The guy reminded the girl that her spirit is equal to 1,000,000 ordinary people. She was able to escape with a few abrasions. The lady angrily and incredulously asked the guy, does he really doubt her? After that, the driver turned and calmly told the girl that the situation was strange. The young guy sitting in the front seat told the driver to put it out of his mind. The guy was a second-rank leader. Was his name the Han? He said joyfully that it was very good that the lady survived against a dangerous enemy. Li Hong said that now their main goal is the witch and he will personally deal with it. The girl sitting behind didn't like Li Hong's self-confidence. They didn't take him seriously. The protagonist's brother drove the car and was silent. He was thinking about something of his own. The car was racing at full speed, carrying its passengers towards their goal. The weather was bright outside and the sun was shining. The main character was in his room in the hospital. The guy was lying on the bed and resting calmly. The events of the last few days had taken a lot of his strength. Liu Yu recalled that the stranger strictly forbade him to reveal his identity and said that something would happen to him several times a month. After much thought, the main character exhaled tiredly and relaxed. Liu Yu looked at his hand and remembered that 3 days had already passed and he had no problems with his body. He still remembered the words of the unfamiliar girl about a few days. The guy got worried. He wasn't sure if he could control the power within himself. Suddenly there was a knock on the door. The main character immediately got distracted and looked away. The guy couldn't hide his excitement. He noticed how the lady came into his room. The lady looked very beaten and tired. She had many bandages on her body. Having gathered his thoughts, Liu Yu asked the lady to forgive him. He explained that he couldn't move for a couple of days. The main character recalled his mortal battle in the body of a witch against the mistress. The guy looked at the girl's wrapped and crippled hand and her wounds. The main character looked at the girl's exhausted face and recalled the events of that day. Liu Yu noticed that the girl's leg was very badly damaged. The main character's face was sad. He reassured himself that he could not control himself when he was in the body of a witch. The lady was also silent. Her gaze expressed deep thoughtfulness and concern. Unexpectedly, the girl was distracted from her thoughts and decided to say something to the main character. The lady said in a confident voice that the rabbit's spiritual energy had completely disappeared. For this reason, there is no point in the guy staying in the hospital. The girl told the main character that he could go home if he felt well. After that, the lady lowered her head and said that this was all she wanted to tell. After the conversation, the lady turned around and prepared to leave. She said goodbye to the guy. The main character excitedly shouted at the girl to wait. The lady stopped. After a short pause, the girl turned around and calmly asked the guy what he wanted. The main character fell silent. He really wanted to say a lot to his mistress, but could not do it. The guy wanted to voice his desire for the mistress, but he still hesitated and could not make up his mind. Having collected his thoughts, Liu Yu told the lady that he wanted to join the night guards. The girl asked the guy, why should he join them? Lu Yu would put himself at risk every day if he worked for them. The guy happily recalled his adventures in the body of a red-haired witch. Lu Yu said happily that he fully understands what awaits him, but he agrees if he can protect himself and other people. The lady listened attentively to the guy. Lu Yu also said that he could see the future and this could make life easier. Having gathered his thoughts, the guy wanted to tell the lady something else very important. Lu Yu said in a confident voice that he didn't want to be the only one being protected. He promised to do everything not to disgrace anyone. The lady looked attentively at the main character. She considered what she had heard from him. Lu Yu was very worried. He was waiting for an answer from the girl. It was very important for him. The lady agreed. She turned around and headed towards the exit of the room. At parting, the girl told the guy that after lunch she would give him an internship contract. The main character was very happy. The mistress told the guy that if everything suits him, then she is waiting for him in the office. Leaving the room, the lady closed the door. The guy shouted words of gratitude after her. The lady was very happy about the conversation she had with the main character. The girl joyfully thought to herself that a very bright future awaits the main character. It was day outside the window. The sun was shining through the hospital room. The main character was busy studying the questionnaire. The guy got ready and prepared to leave the hospital. He filled out the form with great attention. Lu Yu carefully read and filled out all the points of the questionnaire. He prepared to sign it. The protagonist, very pleased with himself, joyfully signed the document. The girl Flora entered the room. She brought the main character his talisman and said that this thing belongs to him. Flora said in an important voice that the talisman is the blessed statue of the great Sun King. The main character said in a dissatisfied voice, "Does the girl have a machete or Kalashnikov in her arsenal?" The girl Flora was surprised and angry at such a request from the main character. Flora sternly told the guy that beginners can only use D-rank items. The main character agreed with the girl's words. He picked up his lucky talisman. The main character looked with love at the figurine of the deity in his hands. She saved his life. Unexpectedly, some sharp insight dawned on the main character. He decided to ask Flora something. Lu Yu asked in surprise, how could the souvenir in his hands be a D-rank item? He thought that he was holding an ordinary souvenir bought at the market. Flora displeasedly told the guy that he was holding in his hands a rare item of night guards that could not be easily obtained. The main character thought, he couldn't understand how his brother could have obtained such a special item. Lu Yu looked at the mysterious talisman in his hands. He had a hunch that his brother might belong to some kind of community. The girl Flora was still standing nearby. She sternly told the guy that she didn't know what he was up to. The main character was surprised. He warily waited for what the girl would tell him next. In the most stern voice, Flora told the main character that she would not allow him to do something. Flora threatened the guy that she would not allow him to steal her mistress's heart. At first the guy was very surprised. He did not expect to hear such revelations from the girl Flora. After a short pause, the guy felt flattered by the girl's words. Flora was angry and unhappy with the protagonist's reaction to her warning. Flora headed towards the exit. She shouted that if the main character thinks about the mistress, he will be finished. After that, Flora loudly closed the door behind her. The guy silently looked after her. Lu Yu thought to himself displeasedly that now he wouldn't even be able to rest properly. The main character became serious and concentrated. He reminded himself that he only had one thing to think about right now. Lu Yu looked at his hand and realized that he needed to control his new power. He hoped that he could get information from the Night Guard community. The guy looked at his hand and couldn't understand what was wrong with it. He needed to learn to control the power he had acquired. Lu Yu clenched his hand into a fist and realized with confidence that he was definitely no longer an ordinary person. The main character clearly remembered the stranger he saw in his visions. He decided that this woman did not wish him harm. The guy thought cheerfully to himself that if you were exposed, they would definitely let you in for experiments. Suddenly the phone rang. The main character reached for the phone. The guy looked and saw that some acquaintance named Sumi was calling him. After thinking a little, the guy remembered such a friend. He was very surprised that Sumi was calling him. Sumi was an old acquaintance of the protagonist, who lived near his old house. Sumi told the main character over the phone that they lived nearby 10 years ago. He recalled that they had not communicated since the car accident. Sumi and the main character were close friends. On the phone, a joyful Sumi asked if Lu Yu considered him her brother. The main character said in a tired voice that he has been a little busy lately. he asked his friend Sumi what happened. Sumi excitedly asked the main character if he remembers what day is tomorrow. He asked if he would come to them. Sumi, standing in his room, told the main character that he had just finished cleaning. The guy thought about it. He did not know what to answer his friend Sumi to his proposal. After that, the main character looked at the calendar on his phone and what tomorrow would be like. The main character saw that tomorrow would be the 6th of March. He began to remember what this date was connected with. The guy sat in deep thought. He knew that tomorrow would be some important day. The main character finally remembered the date exactly. Tomorrow was his father's anniversary. On a very clear, warm and fine day, the main character decided to take a walk down the street. Lu Yu walked through the city blocks. There were a lot of people and shops around. Unexpectedly, some woman noticed the main character walking next to him. She recognized him immediately. The woman happily greeted the guy. The main character greeted the woman back. The main character passing along the street was recognized by his old acquaintances and welcomed him to his native land. Lu Yu grew up in this place. It is located a few bus stops from the city center. After a car accident, the brother gave the main character an apartment in the center. Unexpectedly, the main character stopped on the street. There was something nearby that was familiar to him. The guy returned to the side and saw a huge entrance to the courtyard of some building. The main character stood in front of a wide gate. He prepared to go inside them. Lu Yu thought to himself that he needed to ask why the restaurant had not been opened yet. The main character walked slowly around the restaurant. There was not a soul around. The guy walked up to the stone table and put his hand on it. He indulged in memories. The main character smiled to himself. He had a lot of good things associated with this restaurant. Lu Yu remembered how he was with everyone when he was still young. He stood with his father near the entrance to the restaurant. The father told his son that one day he would buy a restaurant and they would cook together. He asked his son cheerfully, "Will he help him?" Young Lu Yu happily answered his father that he would certainly help him. The main character recalled his childhood and it was a very good time for him. At this time, a Sumi guy approached the entrance to the restaurant along with a broom. He asked the main character if he had returned yet. Sumi said dissatisfied to his longtime friend that he was already tired of cleaning his house. Lu Yu cheerfully answered his comrade that such a giant as he could not get tired. The main character said that he will cook today. Sumi was very happy about this offer. After that, the main character and his friend went together to the kitchen. Sumi said his friend's food was incredible. Quite cheerfully, Sumi suggested inviting the locals to his place. The main character did not like this proposal. The main character reached for the apron hanging in the kitchen. He said judiciously that he was not the cook here. Lu Yu put on an apron and said calmly that he would simply prepare everything for himself and his friend Sumi. After the main character prepared the food, he brought it to the table where there was a photograph of his father. The dish looked very fresh and appetizing. The guy put it on the table. Near the photograph of the late father there was a special vase with burning incense. The main character, turning to the photograph, asked his father for forgiveness for not visiting him for a couple of years in a row. Lu Yu told the late father that he was cooking at his level and improving the knowledge he had acquired. Lu Yu continued to communicate with the photo of his late parent. Sumi thought it was sad that since childhood, the main character was raised only by his father. Sumi looked at his friend very sadly. He understood that his father would not see the main character grow up. After a long conversation with a photograph of his father, the main character got up from his knees and got ready to eat. Lu Yu smiled at his old friend Sumi and said that it was time to eat. The weather was bright and warm outside. The main character was sitting in his former house. The main character and his friend Sumi were sitting in the room at the table and devouring food. Sumi very quickly and with great appetite consumed food from the plate using chopsticks. Sumi said with great pleasure to the main character that he began to cook even better. Lu Yu decided that it was a little too salty. Sumi decided to turn to his old friend with a very important question. Sumi seriously asked the main character if he remembers what happened in the accident. The main character, trying to look as calm as possible, ate slowly and said that it was as if his memory had been blocked. Sumi was very surprised by these words. He asked his friend, was his memory blocked? Lu Yu said that he remembers how their bus, where he was with his father, caught fire and then he fell. In memories of the accident, the main character also had stones from the mountain. Suddenly, some kind of purple talisman appeared in the mind of the main character, and it seemed as if he was shouting about the end of the world. The main character was very scared, he seemed to be overcome with fear. Lu Yu dropped his cutlery in fright and grabbed his head. His friend Sumi became very worried. He approached his friend and told him to forget about everything if it was hard for him. The main character did not understand what was happening to him, he could no longer control the energy. The witch's magical fire vessel appeared in the protagonist's mind. Here, in the mind of the main character, it was as if something deafeningly exploded. The main character realized that he could no longer be near his friend Sumi, he needed to move away. Sumi asked his comrade in surprise, "Where is he running?" Lu Yu ran at full speed to the toilet. The main character, frightened, locked himself in the toilet stall, he needed to be on his own. Lu Yu was very excited, he sat down on top of the toilet to calm down a little and come to his senses. It was as if something was raging inside the main character, he did not understand such a feeling. Lu Yu realized that he now felt the same as the day he burned in the witch's fire. Sumi knocked on the toilet door very excitedly. The main character thought to himself that if the transformation takes place now, his friend will understand everything. Lu Yu thought to himself that it would be very bad if a lot of people gathered here. Out loud he told his friend that he was fine. But the main character was getting worse, he could not control the energy within himself. Sumi was extremely frightened by his friend's condition, the main character felt bad and screamed. Sumi burst into the toilet stall and shouted that he was going to break down the doors. The main character felt to himself that his body seemed to be completely on fire. Sumi shouted a warning to the main character that he was now breaking down the doors. Sumi accelerated, he shouted for his friend to move away from the door inside. Lu Yu could hardly contain himself, he realized that if his friend came in now, he could harm Sumi. The guy fearfully realized to himself that he might even kill his friend, he needs to try to control his power. The main character clearly recalled how a red-haired witch approached him from behind in the fire. Having calmed down a little, the main character figured out what to do in such a situation. The main character decided to try, he spoke out loud to the witch and reminded her that she had asked him for clothes. The main character remembered out loud that he saw a girl that day in the desert. After that, the main character folded his hands and shouted at the witch that he would buy her what she wanted. At the same time, with a huge acceleration, Sumi knocked out the door to the booth with a strong blow. Sumi was extremely excited and scared, he asked his friend what was wrong with him. Sumi was very surprised and amazed to see his friend inside. Sumi looked in amazement at the main character sitting on the toilet. Lu Yu was completely silent and depressed. The main character needed to be shown that he had some kind of illness. He began to scream a little. To enhance the impression, the main character began to scream and show that he seemed to have convulsions. The main character needed to show his acting skills to the maximum. Sumi was very much amazed, he guessed that his friend had health problems. Having calmed down a little, Sumi shouted to the main character that he simply had fiery diarrhea. After visiting the toilet room, the main character returned to the bedroom, he sat quietly on the sofa. Sumi was digging through the boxes, he told his friend that he would find something for him now. The main character thought that perhaps the days that the girl told him about remained for him today. Sumi shouted that he had found what he needed. Sumi handed some kind of box to his friend, the guy thought that such days would happen to him every month. The main character was surprised to take the box from his friend, he asked what he gave him. Lu Yu read that the box contains medicine for hemorrhoids. Sumi told his friend to take the pills and then go to the hospital. The main character smiled contentedly at his friend Sumi, he wanted to show that he was doing well. Sumi calmed down a little, he looked joyfully at his comrade. After that Sumi put his hand on the main character's shoulder. Lu Yu became a little worried. Sumi, with confidence in his voice, said that the main characters should not forget that he has a friend who will always help him. The main character smiled very contentedly, he realized that he could count on his comrade. Sumi offered to help his friend teach him how to use ointment for hemorrhoids. Lu Yu replied dissatisfiedly that he would not let him near him. At this time it was already late evening in the Flower City, the lanterns were shining and the streets were deserted. At the same time, a lonely girl was running through the streets of the Flower City, she seemed to be saving herself. The girl with long blonde hair continued to run, she had no strength, she was out of breath. The girl decided to save herself, she very quickly turned into an alley between the streets. The girl noticed very frightenedly that the alley ended in a dead end, she had nowhere else to run. The girl was very scared, she began to look around in search of salvation. Taking a little breath, the girl stood and listened carefully. Someone seemed to be walking down the street. Gradually the steps began to approach. The girl became more and more scared. Suddenly the clawed paw of a huge monster appeared. He approached the alley. A monster with burning eyes looked into the alley and shouted to the girl that he had found her. The girl was very scared. She screamed. She had nowhere to run from fear. The monster realized that his victim could not escape. He accelerated to attack her. An evil monster with burning eyes prepared to attack the girl. She couldn't defend herself in any way. Unexpectedly, the girl stopped the monster's attack with her foot. The demonic beast was very surprised. The girl calmly kicked the monster with her foot. The monster began to fall. After a powerful blow from the girl, the monster fell and could no longer get up. The surprised demonic beast lay on the ground and could not get up. The monster growled in great surprise that a person could not be so strong. Suddenly, something greatly surprised the demonic beast. He was extremely amazed. The lying monster noticed how rabbit ears grew on the girl's head. A girl with rabbit ears sat on top of the monster. He could not get rid of her in any way. The girl with burning eyes told the monster that he couldn't leave and asked if he was ready to die. The monster, scared to death, invited the demonic girl to negotiate. The girl swung her axe and shouted to the monster that she needed something from him. The girl prepared to attack the lying beast. She shouted that she needed his heart. After that, the girl struck the monster with her axe. She finished him off immediately. The demonic huntress was pleased. She achieved the beast and got what she wanted. The girl was very happy. She sat on the carcass of the monster and held his heart in her hands. The huntress raised her heart and looked at it against the background of the moon. She saw a lot of energy in him. After this, the girl prepared to absorb the heart received from the monster. At this time, the moon in the night sky was eclipsed. There was silence all around. The girl sat and calmly ate the monster's heart. The huntress was very pleased, but the bloody delicacy was not enough for her. The girl with the bunny ears lit up eyes. The monster's heart seemed very tasty to her. The huntress remembered predatorily to herself that there was a thief who stole her vessel from her. The girl looked at the glowing moon. She felt that she would soon meet the thief of the witch's vessel. The huntress excitedly thought to herself about a quick meeting with the kidnapper. The huntress with rabbit ears thought joyfully to herself that she would kill the kidnapper. The main character was outside on a clear and fine day. The sun was shining and he was walking around his former home. There was a tree near the main character's house. Birds sang on it. Lu Yu stood and looked at them in fascination. The guy thought to himself and remembered that 3 whole days had passed since his return. The main character, standing near the entrance to the house, promised his father's soul that he would definitely return. After thinking a little, Lu Yu finally decided to himself that he would live as a person in history. Suddenly, the lady and Flora came up from the side of the main character. They asked the guy if he was the owner of the restaurant. Lu Yu replied that the restaurant had not been open for a long time. The lady thought about it. She looked at the building and meaningfully answered the guy that she understood everything. The main character angrily and excitedly asked the girl, what did she forget here? The lady said that she was surprised to find the main character in this place. She also added that she had not told the guy before about where the night guards were. The main character was very surprised. He began to guess where the organization of the night guards could be located. The lady was silent significantly. She didn't say anything to the guy, expecting him to guess on his own. The lady told the main character that he was right in his thoughts. Their base is in this place. Then the main character returned to his flower city and his home. The guy went up to his floor. He was heading towards his apartment and recalled his conversation with his mistress. Lu Yu remembered the lady's words. She told him that they should meet tomorrow at the appointed place. Main character put the key in the door. He remembered that today he missed school. Lu Yu stood on the threshold and took off his shoes. He told himself that he needed to catch up. Then the main character was very surprised. He looked into the hall of his apartment. The main character was surprised to notice how various animated things were running around the apartment. Right in front of him flashed the eye and jaw of the monster he had killed earlier. Also on the chair was a revived tuft of wool from an earlier killed rabbit and clothes. The main character looked in amazement at the things that came to life. For him it all looked very strange. Lu Yu could not understand how it happened that his sports jacket also came to life. At this time, the animated objects noticed that a man had entered the room. They stopped. The main character silently watched everything that was happening. He could not understand what to do now. The revived things began to scatter around. The green eye said that a person simply should not see them. After this, the eye judiciously informed that the main character would not do anything to them. After that, the revived eye wanted to say something else about the main character. At this time the guy came close to the revived green eye. After that he got scared. After that, the main character grabbed his talisman and swung to hit the animated eye. The main character changed his mind. He placed his heavy talisman on the table. The revived eye was surprised. The green eye was amazed. He realized excitedly that the man could see him. The main character calmly began to talk about the incident when a monster burst into his room and wanted to kill him. The guy told the animated things that from the moment he killed the rabbit in his house, he was able to see them. Sports Jacket and Jaw stood on the stairs. They listened with attention to the main character. The piece of wool hid excitedly on the shelf. The pink dress hid behind a flower pot. The main character looked around and saw that all things were scattered around in disarray. After that, the evil guy blamed the animated objects for causing the mess. The green eye felt guilty. He wanted to say something and somehow justify himself. The main character didn't say anything. He stood and silently examined the new inhabitants of his apartment. The main character exhaled in displeasure. He decided to instruct his new inhabitants. Lu Yu told the sternly revived things that he would not touch them if they kept order. At this time, the witch's burning vessel suddenly appeared in the mind of the main character again. The guy felt bad. Shock went through his body and he began to lose strength. The main character fell to his knees in the center of the hall. He felt very uneasy. The green eye was surprised at this state of the person. Lu Yu, lying on the floor, realized that the transformation had begun with him again. It could start at any moment. The main character saw in front of him a surprised, floating, animated green eye. Lu Yu decided to stop the transformation. He turned to a girl who needed clothes. Having concentrated, the guy said that he promised the girl something from his visions. The main character saw the witch's vessel and shouted to the girl that he would buy whatever she wanted. The burning witch's vessel continued to be in the mind of the protagonist, as if nothing had changed. The guy felt as if he himself was next to the vessel and a flame appeared around him. The main character realized in fear that his plan had completely failed. The process of transformation began. A deadly flame raged around the main character. The green eye was very scared. The Jaw with a sports jacket hid from the fire high on the stairs. Even the living Scrap, along with the pink dress, was very frightened of the fire. The frightened green eye shouted that the main character carried the spiritual power of a witch. Lu Yu fearfully thought to himself that this time he would not be able to stop the incarnation of the witch in himself. Due to the strong fire, the temperature in the room rose. As a result, the fire sensor went off. Water began to splash from the ceiling throughout the room to put out the fire. The transformation of the main character into the body of a witch is over. He was lying on the floor in puddles of water. The witch lay unconscious. She had very long pale hair. Vidma was lying on the floor almost without clothes and without moving. Steam swirled around her. Gradually the magical inhabitants of the apartment became bolder. The living Jaw was surprised that the man had turned into a witch. The witch lay on the floor in complete silence. She was unconscious. Consciousness returned to the main character's body very abruptly. He opened his eyes and realized that the transformation was over. The witch jumped up and looked around excitedly. She saw an animated eye in front of her. The witch looked at the green eye with suspicion with her yellow demonic eyes. The green eye was scared. He felt that the appearance of the witch alarmed him. After that, the witch resolutely extended her hand in the direction of the revived eye. In an angry voice, the witch shouted to the eye that she was hungry. She was still reaching out to him. The witch sharply grabbed her eye and prepared to sit on it. The rest of the living things were very worried about the fate of the little eye. The witch looked at the green eye with a dim look and said that this was her food. The green eye begged. He shouted to the hungry witch to let him go. The witch prepared to swallow the eye. He shouted at her not to eat him. The animated things prepared to say goodbye to the eye. The green eye was almost inside the evil witch. He screamed in fear. Suddenly the witch seemed to have some kind of insight. She felt that she was doing something wrong. After that, the witch threw the eye aside with all her might. He was very surprised. The witch felt unwell. She realized in the depths of her consciousness that she should not have eaten the eye. The witch did not understand what was happening to her. She felt that she could not eat the living green eye. Looking to the side, the witch noticed a refrigerator. She decided that there must be food there. The witch found small supplies of food in the refrigerator. There were vegetables on the top shelf. With a huge and hungry appetite, the witch began to very quickly absorb the vegetables. The girl sat near the open refrigerator and ate everything she could find inside it. After that, the witch felt unwell. I didn't like the regular food. Her usual food did not suit her. After that, the witch vomited. The food in the refrigerator was not suitable for her. The girl felt bad and could not understand why ordinary food began to taste so disgusting to her. The witch looked to the side. She decided to communicate with the magical inhabitants of her apartment. The witch asked the living things sternly if they knew what happened to her. Jia explained that the witch simply cannot consume ordinary human food. Lu Yu realized with surprise and fear that the Jia had called him a witch. The girl asked the inhabitants how she could fill her belly then. The living things became silent. They didn't know how to explain everything correctly to the witch. The hairball said that the witch should absorb the spiritual energy of others. From now on, the only way out for the witch is to kill high-ranking stories. After that, you need to absorb their energy. When the witch eats the heart of her victim, she will be able to completely remove hunger. The Jia importantly and meaningfully explained to the witch her entire current situation. Lu Yu asked in surprise, "Is it really the only way for her now to kill?" Jia explained that the witch must kill and absorb the spiritual energy of the strange stories. Only then will hunger come. Only through this method can higher stories survive. After thinking a little, the Jia told the witch that she remembered something else. Jia explained that their spiritual energy was very weak. For this reason, the witch will not get enough of them. Jia picked up the newspaper and said that there were several strange murders nearby. They can go there to satisfy the witch's hunger. The witch read the news about the murders in the newspaper with excitement and interest. She didn't really want to go to crime scenes. Lu Yu read the news about strange murders. He didn't really like the idea of going there. The main character decided that if he felt bad from hunger, he could try and go to the murder sites. After that, the witch grabbed the talisman from the table and prepared to go. There was no more time to think about everything. The witch with the talisman on her shoulder wanted to go and eat as soon as possible. After that, the witch suddenly stopped. She realized that something was going wrong. The witch stopped. She realized that something was causing her great discomfort. Then the witch screamed. She felt as if she was on fire. The girl looked at herself. She didn't understand what happened to her clothes. She was wearing torn rags. On the side, the clothes on the girl's body ignited and began to burn. The witch was scared. The young witch frightenedly tried to put out the fire on her clothes. She didn't understand why she was burning. After this, the witch realized that she urgently needed to put on something that could not burn. The objects that came to life all pointed to a blue sports jacket. Jacket could suit a girl. The witch realized that the revived jacket definitely wouldn't fit. She decided to find something else. After this, the witch retired to a separate room to completely change clothes. The witch found a better suitable outfit for herself. The clothes were completely new. The witch examined herself from all sides. She told herself that she could change her style. Leaving, the witch asked the things how they turned into strange stories. The pink dress said that all this happened because of the leaflet. There was a curse on her. The witch was very worried. She remembered the leaflet she saw on the rabbit. After that, the witch threw the talisman into her bag and realized that now she needed to move forward. The witch decided that the most important thing for her now is food. The girl with the bag walked confidently into the street. She needed to satisfy her hunger, and everything else could come later. Late evening descended on the city. The bridge was brightly lit and there were no people around. A guy in a helmet was racing on a motorcycle at full speed across the bridge. Behind it was a cargo box. The motorcyclist was riding along a deserted bridge and thought to himself that he was very tired. The guy thought to himself happily that this was most likely his last order. The driver did not notice how someone's white bone appeared from the water on the way in front of him. The motorcycle ran its wheel onto Kostia and it broke through. The driver did not have time to do anything. Because of the broken wheel, the motorcycle was carried far to the side, and the guy fell to the ground. The guy was unconscious on the road. He fell very hard and could not get up. His motorcycle was lying nearby. Having come to his senses a little, the driver stood up with difficulty. He did not understand what had happened to him. The guy turned around to see what he had run into. He saw someone's predatory hand with claws emerge from the puddle. Gradually the body of a huge and predatory monster began to emerge from the water. The guy was very scared and did not understand what was happening and who was now in front of him. A huge monster crawled out of the puddle. There were many hot red eyes on his black body. The guy was very scared. He screamed and decided to flee as quickly as possible. The motorcyclist instantly jumped up from the ground and ran with all his might to the side. The guy was running along a deserted bridge, and at that time a monster was rushing behind him at full speed. The motorcyclist ran away as fast as he could and shouted throughout the area. The monster did not lag behind and chased the guy. An evil and toothy monster was catching up with the guy. He screamed angrily and wheezed after him. The monster's burning eyes saw its prey in front of it. He was already preparing to grab the motorcyclist. The evening embankment was completely silent and deserted. The calm was disturbed only by the sound of the surf. The unexpected area was illuminated with a bright light around from a flying fiery whirlwind. After a heavenly flight, the witch splashed into the water from a great height with a large swing and raised a lot of splashes. From the strong blow, the witch dived deep. There were only bubbles on the surface. Nevertheless, the witch emerged from the water and began to greedily gasp for air. The girl swam to the shore and began to gradually climb out of the water, clinging to the stones with her hands. The witch said to herself that flying does not bring her pleasure. She decided that she would take a taxi back. The witch came out of the water and noticed that all her clothes were completely wet. Suddenly the girl came up with a very original guess. She decided to use it. The witch remembered that she was a walking dryer. She wanted to activate the fire whirlwinds to dry out very quickly. Suddenly the witch began to think. She remembered how there was a fire in the apartment around her. Lu Yu remembered that during the transformation he almost burned down his hut. The main character was still thinking about how he could free his power. The main character stopped and only now realized that he didn't even know how he would fight against the stories. After that, the main character decided to go further along the road. He hoped that he would come up with something later. Very close at that time there was a guy with a monster somewhere. At that time a motorcyclist was walking along the park path. He was able to break away from the monster. The exhausted guy stopped. He decided to rest a little and catch his breath. Having caught his breath, the frightened motorcyclist said to himself that he had almost died. Now the guy decided to calmly return home. Behind him, a monster bone appeared from a puddle. A monster's predatory hand with claws stuck out of the water and grabbed the guy by the leg. The stunned motorcyclist screamed in fear. The monster growled angrily and held the guy by the leg. The guy felt that he couldn't escape. The monster held his leg tightly with its paws. The motorcyclist screamed at the demon to let him go. The monster at that time grabbed the guy by the back. At this time the witch was walking nearby. She heard cries for help and became worried. The main character happily thought to himself that he had found what he needed. Lu Yu ran with all his might. He first needed to save the man from the monster. At this time, a red-haired girl with a bat suddenly appeared from the side. She shouted to the motorcyclist to hold on. The witch was very surprised. She couldn't believe that she could have competitors. The girl shouted in a cheerful voice that the mission was accomplished. She was holding a bat on her shoulder. After that, the main character jumped off the bridge to the side. Lu Yu became worried. He had already seen this girl with a bat somewhere. The main character clearly remembered that he saw a girl with a bat and her magical beast on the bus. The girl ran away at full speed towards the guy. She screamed for him to wait. The girl arrived completely on time. She grabbed the motorcyclist's hand. The girl screamed that now she would show her true strength. A silhouette of a mythical warrior with a snake formed around her. The rescued guy was very surprised. He did not resist the girl's actions in any way. The girl grabbed the guy and with a quick movement threw him out of the water to the side. The witch looked at the motorcyclist who had fallen into the trees and realized that the girl with the bat was definitely not a weak one. The witch realized that she had better watch the girl, otherwise her rival might hit her on the head with a bat. At this time, a monster's hand appeared from the water. He wanted to grab the girl walking next to him. The monster climbed out of the water and screamed. He wanted to grab the girl with his paws. The girl was absolutely not afraid. She swung the bat to hit the monster. With a huge swing, the girl hit the monster with her bat with all her might. The blow from the girl with the bat landed straight on the head of the monster with burning eyes. After that, the girl noticed that after the blow, there was a bunch of fish in the place of the monster. The girl said cheerfully, looking at the fish, that everything turned out to be very easy for her. At this time, the monster sitting on the girl's shoulder told her it was important that this was not all. The girl still didn't understand what else she could have forgotten. At this time, the hands of a monster appeared from behind from the puddles. The girl did not have time to notice how a monster approached her from behind and prepared to grab her. The monster grabbed the girl by the hands. She couldn't resist or hit him in any way. The girl caught by the monster screamed in fear that she had been deceived. The girl frightenedly screamed at the monster to stop. At this time he was pulling her into the water. The monster pulled the girl into the water. She could not and did not have time to do anything to defend herself. The witch watched in surprise as the stranger screwed up. The witch thought to herself what she should do now. If the witch hurries, she will end up underwater. She decided to use the motorcyclist as bait. The witch held her magical talisman near her chest. She needed to do something urgently. Having gathered her thoughts and strength, the witch decided that the time had come for her to act. At this time, bubbles appeared above the puddle on the road. A monster was soon to emerge from it. The guy was lying unconscious on the lawn. A huge monster with red eyes crawled out of the puddle. The monster looked at the motorcyclist and saw his food in him. The witch realized that she needed to act now. A monster with burning eyes walked towards the lying guy. He wanted to eat it. The evil monster extended his clawed paw towards the guy. The motorcyclist was still unconscious. The witch stood behind the monster. She excitedly realized that he needed to be hit right now. The girl jumped over the fence and rushed with her talisman at the monster from behind. The monster seemed to hear something. The witch swung to hit him with all her might. The talisman in the girl's hands began to glow. She was already close to the monster. At the last moment, the monster turned around and saw in surprise how the girl was preparing to hit him with the talisman. The witch hit the monster's head with her talisman and the magical effect began. From a powerful blow with the talisman, a huge yellow and bright explosion appeared. The monster was amazed by such a blow. The talisman had a devastating effect on him. After neutralizing the monster, a strong explosion was heard. The witch was thrown aside. A strong blow threw the witch back. She hit her back against the fence. Her talisman lay next to her. The witch began to come to her senses. She opened her eyes and her strength began to return to her. The main character looked at his talisman. He was surprised that he had such strength. Liu Yu looked around. He still couldn't believe that he could win. The witch looked and saw that the motorcyclist was lying unconscious, so everything was fine. At this time, the witch noticed that the monster, lying on the road, was still showing signs of life. He demanded food. The witch realized that the monster had survived. She reached for her talisman. After that, the witch resolutely ran towards the monster. She was facing the second round of the battle. The monster gradually came to his senses. He stood on all fours and demanded food. Suddenly the monster heard someone approaching him from behind. The witch swung and raised the talisman above her head to hit the frightened monster. Suddenly the monster turned to the witch and asked her to wait. The witch was surprised. The monster fell to his knees and told the witch that he wanted to join her family. The girl was amazed. The stunned and surprised witch could not understand which family the monster was telling her about. 35. Which I was surprised that the monster could talk. She asked about what family he told her about. The evil monster, on his knees, confirmed to the witch that he wanted to join her family. The monster explained that the witch would become stronger if she accepted the story into her family. The main character responded very skeptically to the monster that he understood everything about the fact that he could become stronger. The witch calmly answered the monster that his proposal sounded very cool. The witch Grozno replied that she refused. The monster got scared after this answer. The witch sternly explained to the monster that he was a freak and had harmed people. The demon felt that he had done nothing wrong. The monster begged and explained to the witch that it is normal for strange stories to harm people. The witch prepared to hit the demon with the talisman. Suddenly the ground began to shake underfoot. Cracks appeared everywhere. The ground under the feet of the frightened witch fell apart and she flew down somewhere. A strong blow of water threw him somewhere to the side. She never managed to finish off the monster. After the fall, the witch with the talisman in her hand fell into the trash can near the bench. The dissatisfied witch asked herself what happened to her this time. A very strong and powerful explosion was heard from underground. A bright, tight stream of fire struck. Due to the powerful impact of the jet of fire, huge stones scattered in all directions. A girl appeared with a bat. She looked carefully around, looking for the monster. Suddenly something caught the girl's attention. Her eyes lit up with fire. The girl saw a flying monster. she thought very happy to herself that she had found it. After that, the girl in flight prepared to hit the monster that was nearby with a bat. The demon looked in fear at the warrior flying towards him with a bat. The girl angrily said goodbye to the monster. She swung her bat at him. The evil monster looked at the girl with fear, but he could no longer defend himself in any way. At the last moment the girl called the monster a bastard and hit him on the head with a bat. There was a strong explosion. From the powerful blow and explosion, the monster screamed and fell apart. The explosion from the destroyed monster threw the girl with the bat far back. The girl landed safely. She looked at the place where the dangerous monster had just stood. The warrior very carefully and with caution walked slowly towards the place where the demon was. The girl noticed that in the place of the monster there was only a pile of water and a few fish left. On the ground among the patches of water lay a huge glowing blue eye. The girl came up and carefully took the glowing blue eye from the water with her hand. The warrior was very pleased. She held her eye with her hand and laughed joyfully to herself. The girl raised her hands above her head and shouted joyfully that the mission was accomplished. Her monster congratulated his owner on completing the mission. The girl turned around and headed home. The witch at that time was still sitting nearby in a trash can. The main character looked excitedly after the departing warrior. He was surprised that the girl was able to deal with the monster with one blow. The witch decided to sit in the trash can for now, and then simply run away somewhere. Unexpectedly, the witch noticed how the talisman in her hands began to glow yellow. The witch looked and realized that the talisman was beginning to absorb her energy. At the very last moment, the witch fearfully realized that the end had come for her. A very loud explosion was heard at the side of the trash can. The leaving warrior heard him. The girl turned back in surprise. She couldn't understand what was behind her. The girl asked, "Is there anyone in front of her?" The answer was silence. The exhausted witch was lying on her side in a trash can with a talisman in her hands. The girl decided to go back and see who was lying on the ground in the distance. The monster excitedly told the hostess that you should give your trophy to the stranger. The girl asked why she should do this. The monster explained that the witch of the 7 catastrophes lay before them. The best thing for them now is to buy her off and run away. The girl said dissatisfiedly that the stranger could not be a witch. The main character climbed out of the garbage wind. He realized that the girl and the monster had figured out who he was. The monster excitedly told the hostess that in front of them there was definitely a witch, no matter her appearance. The girl decided to fight the witch. The monster fearfully warned the owner that she would not be able to win. The girl walked confidently with the bat. She was an example of justice. She couldn't just let the witch go. The main character, in a frightened state, saw a stranger coming towards him with a bat. He decided to defend himself with his talisman.